Thank you for signing up with SynergyBaseball.net. I'm Dr. Jason Amstutz, Doctor of Chiropractic, Registered Trigenics Practitioner, and Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a self-shoulder screen. Too many times, athletes of all levels, including the major leaguers that I've worked with, minor leaguers, collegiate, all the way down to the little league, everybody waits for pain to determine whether or not they have a shoulder problem, and sometimes it's too late. A lot of the shoulder pain that's a result of dysfunction can be totally prevented and eliminated just by doing this quick screen, so you can get help before there's actually a problem. There's basically, everybody thinks of the shoulder joint as being only one joint. Well, this is classically the shoulder joint, which is the humeroscapular joint, which is here. There's also the AC joint, which a lot of people have heard about before, which is the acromioclavicular joint. This goes to the sternum, so this would be right here. This is your sternoclavicular joint. And then this big bone here that sits on your back, like this, is the scapulothoracic junction. This is one of the biggest places that athletes have a limited flexibility or motion, the way that this is able to slide on the rib cage. If this stops working correctly, it puts a lot more stress to the actual shoulder joint. So the screen is very simple. It's the quality of the motion, not necessarily the quantity. A lot of people do, all the range of motion tests, and they think, oh, my shoulder must be okay because I have the quantity of motion. What I'm more concerned about, and what I'm going to try to teach you today, is it's the quality of the motion and specific motions that determine whether or not your shoulder is working correctly. Okay, so the beginning part of the shoulder screen is going to start with just a couple of basics to check your range of motion. So the first one, Ryan, is going to be hand up your back, and we're going to compare the throwing shoulder to the non-throwing shoulder. So we can estimate that his finger is here. Okay, go ahead and let's see the left one. And they match. If they're within 2 inches of each other, you've passed that particular screen. Now, right arm up and over your head, Ryan, like this. This checks another group of motions at the shoulder joint and other joints. Okay, good. And left, good. So he's fine. Again, a discrepancy of greater than 2 inches, that would be, you're positive for that. Okay, the next one is going to be, you're going to raise your arm up straight in front of you, slowly with your thumb. You're fine, just like that. Now you will need somebody else to check this part. Or actually, go ahead, go back down. Okay, the second test is called the shoulder flexion test. Basically what you're looking and feeling for on yourself or with your parents' help is simply, is there any popping, clicking, or pain when you raise your arm in these two different directions? Go ahead and raise your arm to the front. This is shoulder flexion. So if he feels any popping, clicking, or pain, that would be a positive for this test. And you want to compare it to the left always, or your non-throwing arm. Okay, next one's going to be arm raised out to the side, thumb up as well. And this one tells a lot of information. You actually want to not only see if there's any popping, clicking, or pain while you're doing it, but you also want to see if you're looking in the mirror at yourself. Go ahead and raise your arm again, Ryan. A lot of people, when they try to get their arm up here, if they're having trouble with this, they'll start leaning over to help get their arm up. If you feel yourself having to lean to get your arm up, you've also failed this test. So that would be another positive for that test. Okay, internal, external rotation at 90 degrees. This is very similar to the throwing motion. You're going to bring your arm up to 90 degrees to the floor, which is parallel to the floor. You can look in a mirror, have somebody check this. Ryan, rotate your arm all the way back towards me, just rotating at the shoulder. You need to have a minimum of 90 degrees. He's just a little bit past his ear, so he's probably closer to 100. That's great. A lot of people are limited in this direction. And then go ahead and go the other direction, all the way down to the floor. Good, and he should be able to get back down to 90. Now, you will find with a lot of athletes that are having shoulder dysfunctional issues, when they do this one, go ahead and go down, they won't be able to get any further than this. And that's called an internal rotation deficit disorder, which can lead to shoulder impingement, supraspinatus tendonitis, bicep tendonitis, and ultimately, this is how you get a labrum tear. Okay, thank you. Next one we're going to do is the adduction screen. So he's going to take his arm and bring it all the way across his body and pull on it with his other elbow, or with his other hand. Any pain in there, any pain with that test is also a positive indication that there's something with the tissues that isn't right. Remember, pain is a sign of dysfunction here, so if you're having pain, that means there's irritations in the shoulder already. Okay, the last one is the posterior capsule test. Go ahead and face the camera. This is the most important test. If the posterior capsule, which here would be, we're looking at the shoulder from the back. Go ahead and turn and face that way for me one more time. This is how the shoulder is on the left. So the posterior capsule would be this part of the capsule, which is made up of a couple of tendons, the capsule itself, and some ligaments. If this gets tight, it has a tendency, go ahead and face me, it has a tendency to not allow the humerus to glide backward. Well, part of raising your arm and throwing is this humerus needs to be loose enough in that socket to be able to allow for some posterior glide. If the posterior capsule gets tight, it eliminates that. It forces the head of the humerus forward ever so slightly and throws off the mechanics of the entire shoulder. So again, facing the camera for me, the posterior capsule screen, again, one of the most important ones of the ones that I've shown you is to bring your arm up, elbow in line with your shoulder, up 90 degrees from the floor, so not down here, not too high, and then he's going to rotate his arm like this. Anything less than 40 degrees, 45 degrees, this is positive. There's a lot of kids out there that are throwing the baseball on a regular basis. High school kids, minor leaguers, I even see major league players that have this problem. They can't get any further than that. So as you can see, Ryan makes it to about 60 degrees, which is great. Again, if it stops here, you need to go see somebody immediately because there's an obvious shoulder dysfunction. So for a quick review of the shoulder screen, again, the first one was simply raising your arm forward, making sure if there's any popping, clicking, or pain, raising your arm to the side, again, looking popping, clicking, pain, or if you notice that at the top you can't quite get it there and you start leaning over. That was 2. Internal and external rotation at 90 degrees, which is this test here. Cross adduction, if this causes any pain. And then the posterior capsule screen. Okay, so a couple of things to remember and a couple of tips. Again, if any of these tests are positive, it simply means that the joint is not working at its optimum. And without proper joint optimum function, you can't have the highest amount of performance, the highest amount of durability of all the joints, which means lack of injury. So always remember, just because you're not having pain while you're throwing or while you're hitting, doesn't mean that the joint itself is functioning at its best. So again, this screen is to help decide whether or not that your joint is functioning at its best. So remember, if you fail any of those tests, you can call the Synergy Performance Institute, and the number's right here, 949-631-5226. You can also check out my website, dramstutz.com. That's dramstutz.com. And my email address is dramstutz@gmail.com.